Like and subscribe for more Army football analysis. Shop our store today. Go Army! Beat Navy!
Welcome to the AFF Football Army Football Show. The Army Football Show is an insider's guide for cadets, old grads, and college football fans to follow the Army team throughout their season as they seek to beat Navy and claim the Commander-in-Chief's trophy. AFF Football is brought to you by our sponsor, Jocelyn Bradley Real Estate. Whether you're buying, selling, or just exploring your options, Jocelyn Bradley is the expert you can trust to navigate the real estate market with ease. Visit jocelynbradley.com to learn more. And let's get started at the AFF Football Army Football Show.
The commercial at the beginning, that's like the coup de grace right there.
Yeah, like we're already starting hot and heavy, right? So like people that say that you can't use AI, there's tons of ways to use it, but that's a topic for a little bit deeper into the show. Welcome back, everyone, to the AFF Football Army Football Show. I am your host, Rob. Guess what, everyone? It is our day. So right now, there's some poor young new cadet getting separated from his family right now and saying 15 seconds to say goodbye, and then their whole world is going to come apart. I'm really glad that I don't have to do it. I have a great our day story. I'll probably say that for later if I haven't told it before, but I got super lucky because I was standing behind Doug Philippone. And if you know Doug Philippone, he showed up from 375 in spits and starches and a black beret. So there was a lot more heat on him than there were the people around us. So life was good, at least at that particular moment. But again, welcome to the AFF Football Army Football Show. This is our lifestyle show. It's an off-season experiment, so we're going to see how it goes. But we're going to talk to some cool stuff. I'm your host, Rob, in Fayetteville, North Carolina. We got Dano Ikebesa calling to you out of coastal Connecticut, and longtime Firsty Club member, Ray Kimball, who's been a guest of the show, a friend of the show. He's been around for a very long time. He's calling to us from the house in the Phoenix area today. So before we really dive into the show, let's play some bills. Hey, if you've listened to the AFF Football Army Football Show before, you know that we have a sponsor here, and her name is Jocelyn Bradley. She's a realtor. If you're PCSing to the Fort Bragg area, we have the realtor for you. Jocelyn is a veteran who spent her Army career in logistics. There, she discovered a passion for making a difference in people's lives. She's committed to helping her clients find their dream home when they're in their market, and she provides exceptional service when she's working on your behalf. Jocelyn has decided to support us for AFF Football this season, and she is the right person to get you into the home of your dreams. Jocelyn also has an extended network of veteran realtors who can help support you if you're moving anywhere in the country. So if you're in the market for a home, Jocelyn should be your first call. Look, even if you're not moving to Fort Bragg, you need a realtor. There's tons of relocation services that are out there, but go with somebody you can trust. And Jocelyn is an absolute gem of a person, and she will provide you the absolute best support that she can give you, or she'll point you in the direction of somebody that can help you out. Other than that, let's move on to Army football news. Dano, you're up.
Yeah, man. Kind of a wild month, all things considered. It feels like a lot has happened. You know, I was writing this out and I was like, we just need the top of the show. It'll take 5 minutes, but no, there's a lot to get to, right? So first off, the Black Knights finally finished filling out their coaching staff earlier this month. They promoted Ryan Starsey. I hope I said that right. I probably did not. From offensive quality control coach to tight ends coach. I know this because Terry texted me the moment that it happened saying, hey, we got a tight ends coach. He played offensive line at Susquehanna University from 2015 to 2018, came to West Point in 2023. Then they brought back Cedric Cunningham as an assistant running back coach, which is fascinating because Cunningham was a 2021 team captain at safety, played 47 games for the Black Knights, which is a freaking lot. And now they got him coaching on the offense. So I'm fascinated by that. It probably an interesting experience to be an assistant running backs coach and sort of learning the ropes. And then finally, Tony Chiaro, I apologize for butchering that name, the new director of football operations coming over from Youngstown State. You know, bottom line, Charo is going to manage logistics for the football team. You know, he's like the honest to God person who makes sure that they get where they're going and have all the stuff that they need. Army football placed 10 on Phil Steele's preseason all-American conference team. So it's not the all-American team. It's the all-American, the conference, all conference team in the American Conference. So that's not confusing, right? First team, center Brady Small, no surprise there. Defensive end Jack Bosom. That's a little surprising. I mean, he definitely closed the year on a tear, but first team all conference, that's pretty impressive. Second team, tight end Parker Pulaski, looking for big things from him. defensive tackle Cody Harris Miller. If you listen to the show before, you know he's like my favorite player on the team. Cornerback Jaden Mays, punter James Wagonseller. Dude, you should have seen him punting at the spring game. God, what a weapon he's going to be this year. And long snapper Owen Walter. On the third God, I can't talk. On the third team, running back God's Power Nwawe and guard Paolo Generali. A little surprised Generali's not higher, to be honest with you. And on the fourth team, we've got quarterback Cale Helms. So, and last thing, while we're sort of at the top of this news thing, Army announced a strategic partnership with USAA. We now get USAA logos on the jerseys. Mikey Stadium is preserved by USAA. I don't think anybody loves these naming rights contracts, but this is a big one. You know, they actually reached out to us and like, hey, this is a big deal. So, you know, we're talking about it. USAA also just invited As for Football back to Radio Row for the Army Navy game. So I'm personally prepared to love everything that they do because I was so excited to get invited back. And listen, reality is Army has to compete. That takes money. It's not easy for them. So, you know, Theo called this transformational in his most recent newsletter. Looks like a pretty big deal money-wise. I don't know, man. Thoughts on this? Anybody? Ray?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really surprised by this. I think you really hit on the key aspect of it, which is the Mikey Stadium preserved by USA. I suspect that had a lot to do with cost overruns on the Mikey Stadium renovation. I mean, look, the reality is everything's more expensive now. Everybody knows that, and that's been a trend for the last year. And the construction is no different. You know, AOG already had to go back out to donors. I want to say it was 18 months or 2 years ago, in the middle of the Mikey Stadium renovation. They had to stop the project, go out and get more money to be able to get this thing. And so I'm willing to bet that they probably had costs continue to escalate, and they really didn't want to go out to the donor base again. And I can't say as I blame them. And frankly, there could be a lot worse partners on this than USAA. Sure. Somewhere out there is the college that is eventually going to have the FanDuel field, and they're going to have
Right.
that conversation with their alumni. So I don't know that I'm necessarily prepared to love it, but I'll certainly accept this as a necessity.
Rob?
Yeah, just look at everything that's going on with Swordsby. You know, not to turn this into the college football roundtable, but like we have enough college athletes, you know, but we have enough college athletes getting themselves in trouble with money, right? So anything that we can do to stabilize the position for not only the football team, but for the academy itself, right? So USAA is a huge partner, regardless of what you think about it. And again, nobody likes NIL except for the people that are, you know, making out like bandits in the night, right? Yeah, like guys making out like bandits in the night are doing okay, but for the fans, it's not really, you know, money is part of the game now. It's unfortunate. It's a sad piece of it, but you know, if we're trying to continue to provide a premier experience for all of our cadet athletes, then partnering with USAA is probably the way to go. And I would say this, you know, and it's speculative, of course, and it's very, very early to be thinking about it, but 3 to 5 years from now, service academies are going to be the place to be in all the other non-revenue generating sports, just for the simple fact that they're going to have the funding to continue to put out field teams and win. And so if you're looking at it from that perspective, like if I'm looking today, I don't like it. If I'm looking 3 to 5 years from now, when like Army is a nationally ranked, you know, competitive
wrestling, gymnastics,
competitive
softball,
university,
softball.
like guess what? At some point, you just got to take, you know, it's the lesser of two evils, right? You can lose all the time, or you can take some external investment that may actually lead to winning. And so right now, too early to tell. But the other part of it is like how many cadets have gotten Cal loans from USAA?
Yeah.
For like decades, right? Right. So like we can say like, oh my gosh, why do we have a partnership with USAA? I think we always have. Yeah. This one's just more public, you know, and so I think it's just one of those things. And then, you know, back to football really quick. But, you know, I think as far as having position coaches, that's a good thing. Even if the guy is like new or a little bit different, you know, he's going to provide a perspective that's not from the player's vantage point, right? So somebody that has, you know, played a lot of football helps. Somebody that's watched a lot of football helps. And so you can make those tweaks specifically on, you know, how to coach tight ends or how to coach running backs based off of, you know, there's enough education out there. God forbid, like if you want to install a wing T offense tomorrow, you could probably do you could probably find about 5,000 hours worth of different variations of formations on the, you know, on the internet. So it's it's less of an aspect of like the fundamentals of coaching. It's just the ability to connect with the players. And I think one of the things that Army has done very, very well over the last few years is bringing people that connect with the players well. And because they connect with the players well, you get better performance.
Yeah, you can really see when a position group has great coaches and when they don't. For example, when was the last time you saw Army secondary underperform? I literally can't remember when that's happened in the Monken era. So I will say, I'm in 2 different group texts with Terry. So everything that happens concerning the tight ends is like burning up my phone every day. And he's expressed that he's concerned about an O-line guy without pass catching experience, not being able to advocate for the tight ends. He envisions this world where those guys catch 1 to 2 balls per game. And, Parker Pulaski, we saw him emerge as a weapon down the stretch last season. We all know that Tex can catch. I mean, I've seen him catch. The guy, believe me, he has great hands. And I firmly believe that the reason that they beat K-State last year was because they hit some passes early, and that kept the Wildcats from jamming the box. And, the rest is history. So if they can find a way to sort of use all of their weapons, I'll be happy. Not advocating for 20 passes a game, but they could do 10, telling you. Anyway, the other thing that impressed me as I was going through the list of all conference players is just how much experience is on the team. I thought all of it was going to be on the offensive side. I mean, we talked about this in the press box last year too, but Harris Miller, Bosom, Mays on the defense, that's just on the all conference team. Like, this might be the best D-line group we've had 5 years.
Yeah.
Since 2019. So yeah. I'm excited. Low key excited.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So I'll keep the ball here.
Okay.
Keeper. Our day is today. 72 new cadets from 22 states. The official press release said 11 from Georgia and California, but I don't think that's 22 total. I think that must be collectively.
Yeah.
2 from Connecticut, 1 from right down the road in Fairfield.
Nice.
Just 3
The
quarterbacks.
football powerhouse of Connecticut.
Yeah, for sure. God. Honestly, Friday night football in Connecticut is so frustrating. Just 3 quarterbacks on this list, which is kind of unusual. So we'll see how that plays out. And we'll close this top part of the show out by a few scheduling notes. The opener is now on Saturday, September 5th, not Friday the 4th, against Bryant, with a kickoff at noon, which is kind of unusual because a lot of these FCS games have come on that Friday of Labor Day weekend. Then Army has a weirdly scheduled game at Temple on Friday, September 25th at 4 p.m. on ESPN. I can't fathom one single reason why that game is scheduled that way, but whatever. I mean, there's nothing special about September 25th to my knowledge. It's the day before my daughter's birthday, so what are you going to do? But anyway, then they're at Tulsa Thursday, October 23rd, starting at 8:30 p.m. That's a Thursday night game on ESPN2. At home in prime time against Air Force on Saturday, November 7th at 7:30 p.m. Omar wrote a really good article about that. If you're interested, that's up on the website. And then finally, Army-Navy at 3:30 p.m. on CBS, MetLife Stadium. I'm fascinated to find out that Radio Row this year is at the Times Square Sheraton that Friday. So if you're, bouncing around town, come by and see us, man. We are going to be there. Don't know how they're going to handle transportation to the game. I assume they'll put us up in the Sheraton Hotel. Like, that's a whole deal. And already shaping up to be an iconic AFF team dinner on that Thursday night.
Yeah, for sure. All
Anybody
right.
got any thoughts? Go ahead.
I know for me, in terms of the scheduling the evening games, that's the nice thing about being closer to the West Coast is I'm either 2 or 3 hours behind the tyranny of the Eastern time zone. So, hey, schedule them as late as you want. You're still not going to cut into my bedtime. I'm all good. I am curious, and I'll just throw this out there to stir the pot in the Firsty Club on who we think this year's Army-Navy jerseys are going to honor. I mean, we've gone through pretty much the usual suspects in terms of divisions. The cavalryman in me would love to see a 3rd ACR jersey, but I don't know. I'd love to see some of the initial thoughts on that and where the First Club thinks that's going.
Okay, so I can tell you that Terry is screaming at his TV right now, telling you 2nd Infantry Division.
I'm sorry, Terry. I have failed to show the proper love to the Indian head, and I will do flutter kicks after this for that.
I don't think that's what it's going to be. I think it's going to tie into the 250th anniversary of the nation, but we shall see. Rob?
Yeah, I think it'll probably be Confederate Army, or not Confederate Army, but Continental Army. Confederate
I
Army.
doubt.
Hey, same thing. Hey, you never know. Well, the way that people act these days, I don't think there is a difference between the Confederacy or the Continental Army. But
That is a scorching hot take coming in from Rob.
Hey, you know what? Do not be surprised. Like, stranger things have happened, folks. Stranger things have happened. But speaking of strange things, we do have somebody that doesn't do strange things with your money, and that's Craig Oxane. So if you've listened to this show at all, you know that we have a sponsor here. His name is Craig Oxane. He's the area sales manager and mortgage broker at the Money Store. He's class of 94, can lend in all 50 states, and is one of the most successful lenders in the country. He has super competitive rates. Craig is going to give you the best deal that you possibly can. Friends, the whole mortgage process is super confusing, and with interest rates moving all over the place, now is not the time to make a deal with some clown that's just trying to make a buck off you. Deal with somebody who really cares. Not a call center, so not some random big box bank or mindless website. This is actually how the West Point Network functions. Craig is helping us stay in business here at Ask for Football, and we are helping you get a better deal on a mortgage by introducing you to the very man that you need to meet. Plus, Craig doesn't charge a lender fee for veterans. That's a huge saving, about $1,300. Get that money, friends. Craig Oxane, area sales manager for the Money Store. Check him out. The link is on our website. He's got a little business card. Click on it, and you will be talking to Craig in just a moment. And 100%, Greg can find you a house both north and south of the Mason-Dixon. Over to you, Dan.
That one's going to live in infamy.
Yeah. So might as well put that on your bingo card.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about AI. And I intentionally buried the lead because we wanted to do this. Rob and I, picture if you will, we're sitting in the press box in Baltimore last year, expecting Army to get run out of the building, to be perfectly honest with you. And talking about, what to do with the show. And I don't know if it's a secret or not, but I've always wanted to do like a men's lifestyle brand. And I don't think AFF is the thing for that, but we were talking about, maybe we can do it and just talk about stuff that interests us during the off season. So at the time, AI was one of a few possible topics. And then Ray and I got to talking about it offline. And at that point, this back in December, I think people were like interested, but cautiously, I don't know if optimistic is the wrong word, but like, what are we looking at here? And since then, people have freaked out. Yeah, so, so I buried the lead because I didn't want people to be disgusted by us and just say, "Hey, I don't want to listen to this show about AI." We're going to talk about football too, but like it is June. Let's talk about it, right? Ray, should people be afraid of artificial intelligence?
I think fear of AI is really about being afraid of change more broadly. And I want to be really clear that I'm not saying that in a disparaging way, right? There are plenty of reasons to be scared or be nervous about change. Certainly anybody who's been in the Army has lived through the phenomenon of the change of command and the unknown of the new commander coming in. Are they going to turn my life upside down? What's going to happen? So, just about everybody who's listening here, understands the idea of being nervous about change, being nervous about the unknown. Nobody likes getting their lives turned upside down. Even as a guy who's only working part-time right now and even just working for myself, right? So I don't have to deal with like kind of top-down pressures about AI. It's got enormously disruptive potential for the areas that I work in. It definitely upsets a lot of apple carts. And so I've had to really think about whether I want to ride this wave or whether I want to step away from it. I've chosen to ride it, and we'll talk about some of the stuff that I've done, but I can totally understand why people would say, I don't want any part of this. This is too disruptive. It causes too much upheaval, and I don't want anything. For me, what I've really tried to do is to find ways to use it constructively that are still consistent with the ethical norms that I've always tried to apply in my life. And that's really tough because AI is the proverbial easy button in a lot of different ways, right? You just feed it your words in a conversational sense, and it's going to spit something back out at you, no coding required. And so really, to me, it boils down to constructive use of AI requires discipline. It requires you to be really detailed in what you tell it. You've got to be very discerning in reviewing what it's going to give you. And then, and I think this is an area where a lot of people fall short, honest in what you credit for and what you take credit for in terms of where the outcome is. And so to me, there was a lot of talk over the last couple of years about this new role of prompt engineer, and we were going to train people how to craft prompts. And I think that has mercifully died. And rather than trying to teach prompting techniques, I think really teaching that kind of disciplined approach to AI and being very deliberate in how you use it, that to me is what we ought to be teaching people.
I mean, to be fair, the ownership class has spent the last 5-6 months telling you that they don't need you anymore, that they're going to replace you with a robot. And I don't know how you're expected to take that. Like, 2 middle fingers is kind of the norm, right? Like, you don't need me anymore. All right. And I also think, a lot of these guys are salesmen or finance guys, but they really come across like salesmen.
Yeah.
And they're just telling you this thing is going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread. And these are not engineering guys. And I think you sort of have to listen to that as, these guys are over promising. Whether they under deliver, I guess, is up to you based on sort of how you take it. Rob?
Yeah. So a couple of things. The first part is we're going to get a little bit heady. I'm not going to dive too deep into it, but like, as far as people's fear of AI is, like, everybody thinks Skynet, right? Like, Terminator is going to happen because, artificial intelligence exists. And believe it or not, most of the greatest grounding for a lot of technology that we currently have comes from science fiction, right? So if you're looking at Isaac Asimov's 3 laws for robotics, if you apply that in your utilization of AI, then it's almost impossible for your AI to, overrun the thing. And I
mean, to be fair, they got AI doing actual targeting decisions right now, at least supposedly.
Correct. But there's still a human in the loop. And so that's the thing, right? So when you look at when you look at autonomy for targeting, like, I'm looking for, certain frequency patterns or, imagery or whatever.
Yeah. Right.
So those things are all, it's all computational data. And basically what it's doing is it's relieving the cognitive burden on someone else. Right. So, like, I can take, a junior person that has 5 years of experience and have him have enabled decision-making from the entire staff. Right. And so that's a cool part about it, is I can make decisions at a lower level, which is what we want to do anyway. Right. In the military, like, hey, look, it's a team leaders fight. Let the team leaders fight the fight and make the decisions with the information that they have. But then the flip side of that is, how much information am I giving people? Or is it too much? Or is it being filtered? Or is the AI even poisoned? Right. And that's the other part. So we can remember a few years back where you typed in Benjamin Franklin in an AI chatbot and you got a picture of a black dude. Right. Because people were doing revisionist history within AI. Right. Like, and that's part of the problem. So, like, you have to have a clearinghouse of ethics and morals and everything else. And because it's so new, there's no boundaries. Right. So if you're going to create the tool for yourself, you've got to put the boundaries in yourself. Right. So you have to build them into your own process, as Ray mentioned before. But, like, I think AI is very novel for the use of, like, making royalty-free music. Right. So I can make something that sounds similar to something that's out there, but it's not so much that it's going to bust somebody's copyright.
Well,
or vision.
That's an interesting one, because it can make that music because it's been trained on existing music. So it really should be paying a royalty for that training, which is beyond the scope of this discussion, right? I mean, that's not the technology, that's the execution of the training. Yeah,
but typically most of those platforms that you can write AI music are pay to play, and then you can download a commercial license for them, right? So there are steps in there to protect intellectual property from other people, and that's the whole point, right? Is we want to protect intellectual property. But like I said, I like using it for short clips, royalty-free music. The other part of it is think of it this way, right? If you're nervous about AI, stop using spell check on Word, turn off all your Netflix, turn off your iPhone, turn off all these platforms that are AI enabled, that are listening to you, providing you algorithms and providing you information. Hey, these are your recommendations. Well, where do you think those recommendations come from? The hours of completed television that you wrote. They toss it into an algorithm, and then it pops up like, hey, that's pretty similar to the last movie I watched. Why is that? Because the AI is reading the content that you've previously watched and enjoyed, and it's feeding you more of it. So turn all that off.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's an interesting point, is that there's a lot of fear of what the technology is without a lot of understanding of what the technology is, which is just doubled down on, because I get the sense that in many cases the people selling the technology don't even understand what they're selling, which is frustrating in the extreme. So, I use it as an editing platform. And when I say that, it's important to understand, like, it's a statistical prediction algorithm. It's tokenizing everything that you say and using those tokens to use and a statistical model to predict like what the most average possible answer would be. So if you're writing a scene, and Ray has read a lot of my work, so he can probably appreciate this. If you're writing a scene and you're me, like, I don't necessarily see the world the way everybody else does. And I definitely, like, I know that my writing style can get a little idiosyncratic. It's okay. It's fine. But getting an AI editor to go over it and be like, you could normalize this to be more like what other people would say, is useful feedback. Not you don't take every one of those suggestions, but that's like
it makes
nothing.
It will make your writing more accessible, right? And that's the thing, is like there's all topics that we're kind of autistic on, right? And I'm gonna dive into this one. I'm gonna nerd out for just a quick second, but like, if you have not seen the digital prosthetics, right? Star Trek Unification came out last year, and it was a very impressive feat because they took an actor and made digital prosthetics and made him look like a young William Shatner, right?
Oh, wow.
And so he performed basically like the scene after, Kirk dies in that god awful Star Trek Generations movie, right? Well, they show him like walking into heaven and meeting all the people that he has influenced along the way. And then he has a conversation with Spock. And the reality of it is it was all digital prosthetics that were done to launch a project to say, hey, look, if you're an actor, preserve your name, image, and likeness over time. And then your family in the future will be able to sell your likeness for utilization in other platforms or whatnot. Right. And again, it's early stages.
Yeah.
But, James Earl Jones did that with his voice, right? You can do Darth Vader with James Earl Jones's voice from now into eternity because he signed a perpetual license with Disney. So
I personally wish that they would be a little bit more willing to recast some of these iconic roles, but if you're an actor, it does make sense. You're going either way, right? Like, I am not going to be able to perform this role either way, and there's a decent chance that somebody's going to take advantage of you one way or another. So if you license it, you get your NIL, then that's the best you can probably do.
Yeah, at least somebody that and trust is going to make money off of it, rather than you losing out on an opportunity for a character. And again, this is all early stages, so we just don't know where it's going to go. But like, I can appreciate those efforts that people are doing to create content that is enjoyable, and actually is it's not great because you can tell that that's AI just by the way that the character's moving or the lips are out of sync or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's like, I think the easiest way that I would look at it, like if I was a creator in like movies or television, I would use it for like pre-visualization tool, right? So I'm gonna build this thing out, use it for previs, and then I'm gonna set all my shots, and then it just saves me time, right? And it makes me more efficient doing other things. And maybe that's the way I would use it. Doesn't necessarily mean that's the way everybody would use it, but I think that's a good thing. But I'll kick it over to Ray, because I know you have a lot more deep thoughts on this topic.
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing that I would jump in on, I'm generally agreeing with what's been said here on the issue of intellectual property that Dan brought up. I want to be clear up front. If you're a copyright holder for something and OpenAI or Anthropic or one of these other companies scraped your stuff and used it to train without your permission, man, I hope you sign on to the class action lawsuits that are going on and frickin' take those guys to the cleaners. 100%, you will get no dispute from me.
That's not a technology issue. That's a business execution issue.
Absolutely. That being said, on the business execution side, there is a massive body of works, written, video, music, that is out there that is still technically under copyright by virtue of the laws, but that nobody is effectively enforcing that copyright or even seeking to enforce that copyright because authors have died, because companies have gone out of business. I run into this all the time in the work that I do, where I try to get copyright permissions for something and nobody can figure out who actually owns it. So I think there's room here for a grand bargain of, yes, compensate copyright holders who are having their stuff used, but at the same time, inject some sense into these zombie copyrights that are out there that nobody is in a position to enforce or even profit from anymore because things have moved on. Let those things move into the public domain. Let those things move into fair use sooner. And I think ultimately that could be something out of this regime that could potentially benefit everybody.
Okay, Ray, we are 29 minutes and 45 seconds into a show in which you've talked at least 3 times about your work. What do you do?
Yeah. So my field is educational games. A lot of the writing that I do centers on classroom role-playing games. So I do that primarily for higher ed, but also for some corporate folks. I personally started using AI in February of 2023 for the work that I do. And at that point, I was totally unimpressed by it. It was full of hallucinations. The writing was crap. And I basically looked at it and went, nah, not impressed by it. But because I jumped on it that early and I've watched it evolve over the last 3 years, I've gotten to watch it grow and evolve in capability. And so the first things that I would tell people are that if your impressions of AI and what it can and can't do are driven by experiences that are a year or more old, you probably want to revisit that because the technology is evolving that fast that what you think you know about it is not exactly accurate. Within game authoring itself, I've used AI as a spur for ideas on roles. So I had a set of roles in a game that had various positions on different issues, and I wanted to create a diverse roster of identities to inhabit them. And this goes back to the point that Dan made about, we're limited by our personal experience. Yeah, I could have come up with 18 different names, but they would have been, pretty bland variations on, my boring middle class, upper middle class experience. Instead, I had it generate me a set of identities that would be diverse in terms of racial identity, in terms of gender, in terms of socioeconomic status. That then gave me the ability to really flesh out these roles to be more like what I wanted. I'll definitely use it sometimes as a summary tool. I'll feed it a primary source document that I have permissions for, again, going back to this whole intellectual property thing, and I'll ask it to summarize the document in language that's accessible to an undergrad, right? I have a certain way that I write. I have a certain way that I phrase things, and I am under no illusions that is necessarily accessible to a current 18, 19, 20-year-old.
Yes. This is a really good use case for AI, in my opinion, as well, is just to kind of beat the idiosyncrasy out of your writing in some cases.
Absolutely.
Even if you choose to okay, I understand what you're saying, but I'm going to leave that in there, which is probably where I land about half the time. Even if that's your choice, just getting the feedback like this is weird is like useful feedback, in my opinion. Go ahead,
Absolutely.
Ray. Sorry.
Yeah, no. And the most recent wrinkle that I've tried, and this is just kind of new in the last couple of months that the technology has gotten to the point where I've been comfortable doing this, is using it to generate summary documents, different content in areas where I don't have expertise. So in one game, I needed a summary of some points on constitutional law, and I am many things, but a lawyer I am not. In another game, I needed it to I needed it to use applied trigonometry to solve navigation problems. Now, Dan, being the amazing engineer that he is, he can probably do that in his sleep with no problem. Okay,
I have to be awake.
Yeah, but my showing in plebe and yearling math was less than stellar, and so I was quite happy to turn that over. And in both cases, what I got was really, really good. Now, you've got to be really careful in this area. I couldn't just take the bot's word for it. I had to take what it gave me and then go look up what it was referencing, look at the steps, work it through myself, make sure that it was actually valid. Hallucinations are not, in my opinion, are not the problem that they used to be, but they are still very much an issue. I mean, just ask any of the lawyers who are potentially getting disbarred because they used it to create legal citations. But that goes back to discipline. That goes back to disciplined use.
Again, that's not a technology issue. I mean, it is a technology issue, but it's also a business application issue, right? I mean,
100%.
You're submitting something that you didn't even look at, which is nuts.
Well, yeah, and I think that's the the poison pill in AI is just not spot checking, right? It's troop leading procedure number 8, supervise, right? Like, even though it's a tool, supervise it. Like, go back in, double check things, look at it, and understand what you're, and it's computational data. And I say this all the time: artificial intelligence exposes smart people, because they can write good prompts, and it also exposes not so smart people because they don't know how to write a good prompt. So you're going to get bad data out of the prompt because you're not feeding it, something that it can actually chew on, and for those of you that are novices to AI and are thinking about launching your career with the AI platform, just remember this, that, the AI is only as good as the inputs that it gives.
Yeah.
And if you don't feed it first, like your first year, if you're going to start on a platform, just feed it your previous work, so it understands how you write, how you think, so it can give you more of those tailored answers so you can do better than that. Because if not, you're going to get some bad data. Like last year, it was funny because I threw ChatGPT and it was like, hey, who's going to win the national championship? And it was like Ohio State. And it's like, bro, they already lost, and it was like using current statistics and betting lines and all the things that are out there, all the information that's available. And it still came up with the wrong answer, right? Even though the games were played, like, it could have gone out to the internet and said, hey, look, there's the score. How's Ohio State going to win when they've been eliminated? And that's just one of those things that, like, you have to spot check it or you're not going to get the results that you want. And sometimes you have to write a prompt, more than once, because maybe you weren't clear with what your intent was and you didn't get the response that you needed. So, the upside is the research time that you're going to save by rewriting the prompt, vice having to, continue to do it over and over again. But I think there's just, is what it is. I think some people will like it, some people won't. I think it's a good tool. It's useful.
You're right that it's Rob and I have had this conversation before. It's like using Excel as an engineer. Like, Excel is great if you're an engineer because I know how to use these formulas, but I'm not going to go get out my slide rule and do all this crazy mathematics, especially if you're talking like electrical engineering. The math itself can get extremely esoteric very quickly. So, if you're trying to do like a power load flow in a complex system, just get the computer. However, if you don't understand what it's doing, just having the model isn't going to turn you into an engineer. I could give my kids Excel. They're not going to produce a power flow. That's not what's going to occur. And this is kind of, I think, what's going on with some of these writers who are like, oh, I'm going to get AI to write my book. Like, bro, AI is not going to write shit for you. You're going to wind up with a mess because you don't even know what you're looking at. You don't even know how to get the formulas to work. So,
I just want to note Dan's bravery in admitting that he has a slide rule at hand. That is a brave admission of you, Dan.
Well, if James or Jordan were on here, they'd be calling us old. But of course, you and I are the same age. So what can you do?
Yeah. So,
all right. Hey. Would you like to move on to the mailbag? Have we beat this to death?
Certainly. I think
I really thought we were going to get some comments yelling at us from the peanut gallery. It's a little ominous that people are just kind of sitting there. I thought there was at least a 50% chance we get canceled because of this show.
No, I think it's an interesting enough topic, and I would guess we're somewhat trusted sources, so we're not going to put out some bad, we're not going to put out bad information. And that's
I will say, I have tried several times to have AI go look up information for me on something that's so esoteric that I can't find it easily, like college lacrosse. Do not do this. That will not work.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
Yeah.
I also think there's a lot of folks out there that just haven't really made up their mind on AI yet. And I mean, there's a really vocal minority that are booing commencement speakers, but I think there's a lot of people, especially among kind of the demographic of this show, that really have not settled on a position.
Well, what are the commencement speakers saying? Are they saying you're going to lose your job and you're never going to work because I'm going to hire a bunch of robots? Because obviously that's going to get booed. Again, not a technology issue. That is
that's a business decision.
Issue. Yeah,
that's a business decision for sure. All right, moving on to the mailbag. Hey, and speaking of AI, we have an AI generated intro for the mailbag segment.
You got mail.
Nice.
And that was simply generated.
So I'll defend this. We were talking about this before. We're not going to hire a camera crew and an actor and a props department to put that together. It's either that or clip art. So just take it for what it is.
Yeah, and it's certainly not as creepy as the one that we had last year, just to be honest. So moving on to mailbag. So Ken said, bigger issue question: opinion on the the NCAA's new age-based eligibility model and any impact on service academies. Starting in 2020,
not using AI. I had to Google this.
Oh, okay. You want to go for it?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
You're fine.
Yeah. All right. So starting next year, 2027, not this year, the NC2A has instituted an age-based eligibility model, which I did not know about until Ken asked this question, that allows you 5 years of eligibility, not 5 years in a 4-year, or not 4 years in a 5-year span, but just straight up 5 years. But you have to enroll in the year of your 19th birthday, no later than that. So he asked, how's that going to impact the service academies? And it strikes me that that's going to help, because if you think about it, theoretically, guys should age out when they're 25 at the very latest, probably 24 in most cases. And like, there were really a lot of guys in college football last year, 25 and older. You had Frank Harris playing at 27, like becoming the de facto mayor of San Antonio. The NC2A is going to continue to have some waivers, but in general, I couldn't be more in favor of this. Like, that's a great idea. Get these guys who are doing their second doctorate the hell out of there. And honestly, I'll shut up and let you guys talk after this, but the real winner to me is like the CFL, USFL, XFL, UFL, whatever the hell they're calling the B Pro League. Like, that's the real winner, because those guys can't pay what Alabama's NIL is going to pay, or even Memphis's NIL is going to pay in some cases. So getting some more actual pros into that secondary league, that might make a huge difference for them.
Yeah, I think it's important, because there's big money in college football. The problem is, these guys are hanging out forever. Like, there was the one kid from Miami that like 9 seasons.
Yeah.
Come on. Like, at some point you got to grow up and,
get a job. Like,
yeah, Peter Pan has left the building. Frank Harris can start a support group for all the guys that have like 7 years of college football experience, and we can move on to the next thing.
If he doesn't own a car dealership in San Antonio, his agent needs to haze himself, because what else is he doing anyway? All right.
Yeah, he was there for a long time.
My hope is that between this and the decisions that we saw on Brendan Sorsby and keeping that guy from playing any further, that maybe sanity is actually starting to prevail in some of these areas, and we're starting to see a pushback on the Wild West that has existed up to this point. A guy can hope.
So that leaves us with the transfer portal. And I'm very much of two minds about the transfer portal, because on the one hand, if a kid is in a bad situation, you don't want to force them to stay there. And on the other hand, these kids are shooting themselves in the foot. So
yeah,
I'm not going to pretend I know what the right answer is, but it's interesting. And it looks like, like you said, there's some pushback finally.
All right. So next question. Yeah. With the big conferences moving to 9 conference game schedules, how much harder will it be for Army to get a big time opponent on the schedule moving forward, especially scheduling a home and home series? I know Oklahoma fans were disappointed in 2021 in that cancellation. I don't know. I think Army is a big enough national brand that somebody is going to take the plunge and sign them up. And it just depends on, how they looked the year before on whether or not there's going to be trepidation, on bringing them to your home stadium. Like Michigan, Michigan and Oklahoma were like holding their breath because they barely got out of there in overtime. And then there's other years where it's like, okay, well, who are we going to play? And Kansas State probably assumed that, like, yeah, they were good. They won 12 games in the American last year, but they're not going to come down here and upset us at home. So anything can happen. It's college football. That's why we play the games. Like, paper is one thing, but competition is something else.
I would like to hold my fire until we read the next question and group them together.
Okay, sounds good. How much smarter does it look now that Army joining the American Conference for football? Do we think, and the note is they didn't have a choice. Mike Buddy basically said straight up, we try to tell you guys the same thing without coming out and just saying it the year that it happened. It just makes sense because of the way that college football is going. Like, you have to be in a conference in order to win. Yeah. Like, and I think the only person that's going to get the Notre Dame clause in the 12-team playoff is Notre Dame, right? So, like, if college football, your best pathway into the playoff is going to be, winning your conference championship. And I think, unfortunately, it's going to take a while for the bubbles to level just because, like Ray said, there's too much money floating around and it's out of control. Like, make no mistake, the state of Texas is going to put a whooping on college football this season. Like, why? Because there's been millions of dollars, close to like $250 million in Texas has been flying around to get players in the right places so they can win. Right. So they're going to be competitive for sure. Hey, you know what? I'll say it now. Heisman talk for Arch Manning is going to be nauseating this season. So go ahead and get your Tums ready because like they're going to be talking about it. But if you look at the way that he played at the end of the season last year, like the kid might live up to the hype.
Come on. Can I bet against that? Can I bet the prop that he doesn't win the Heisman?
100% you can bet against it. Like, look, anything can happen. It is college football. But if Arch Manning stays healthy, he has a pretty good chance of at least being a finalist and ending up in the stage in New York. I mean, I think that's reasonable.
I wonder if we could get ChatGPT to plot out the success of Texas college sports against the price of oil.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that would be an interesting conundrum to dive into, and that would be a great use for AI because nobody has time to dig into that kind of stuff. So, Dan,
I'll give a scorching hot take on this, which is that I think over the next decade, Army is going to become a valued opponent for people to schedule, not necessarily because it's going to be great football one way or another, but because Army's recognized as having a national fan base that folks can draw from just about anywhere, fans that travel, fans that are loyal, and they want to come there. And I think with the exception of some really high-profile marquee college teams, I think that is going to be harder and harder to find for many schools. And so scheduling Army for a home game is going to be a way to actually get butts and seats in your stadium in a way that is potentially going to be harder.
That is a good point. We saw that this year in bowl season when, and honestly, I hesitate to call them mediocre. They were not a bad team, but boy, they left a couple wins on the table that we really needed, and they still made it to the Fenway Bowl, which has a monster payout and is one of the Americans' top bowls. That was crazy, and that happened because it's regionally close by, and they could draw regionally, but also because Army's going to draw on TV, and I think people were really interested in that matchup. And it didn't hurt anybody except Connecticut that Army whooped up and looked awesome. So yeah, that was, I agree with you. That's not dumb. It is hard though. I mean, you see this year they've got, who are we playing? What's the non-conference game? I can't remember. Well, it ain't a Power 5. That's what.
Yeah.
And that just happened because something fell through.
Yeah, but I think it's a balance. If you do a home and home every other year, every third year, you get a Power 5 school. Because here's what's going to happen. Like it goes back to the previous discussion, right? Like when you look at the older dudes that were playing in football, why did Indiana win? Because Kirk Cignetti took his entire team from JMU and moved them to Indiana, and all those guys were like 35 years old and had like 14 kids. So, from a college football perspective, age matters, right? But now that you have these new restrictions where, players aren't going to be able to play until they're 35, and then it's going to be based off of competition. And one of the greatest moves for Army by having both the CBS contract and being on ESPN because of the American, that just gives you more eyes on your competition, right? Yeah. So if it doesn't make it's no longer conferences like we always said last year. It's broadcast conglomerates, right? So if I can get into a broadcast conglomerate, that's going to let me hit multiple demos. If I'm playing Army and I know like CBS is going to be talking about Army's got this person on the schedule, they're going to be on ESPN next week. Then they're on ESPN, from a dollars and cents standpoint, it makes the most sense to schedule Army because you're going to get more TV time with them.
I mean, you look at the schedule this year, you've got Air Force on CBS, Army Navy on CBS, game on ESPN2, another game on ESPN. And that's not even a particularly strong schedule as far as all that's concerned. So yeah, I think that's really interesting. You want to go on?
Yeah. So moving on, James Pagano asked like over under on 8 games started for Helms. That's interesting because I think, most of the time guys get bigger in the off season, regardless, they lift more, they perform a little bit better, but I think there may be a little bit of quarterback competition. Don't know, question mark. and we ask this question every offseason. Like it's guaranteed, like somebody's going to graduate, and then, we're going to ask the same question at the end of the year. Like, who's going to be quarterback next year? Is it going to be a returning starter, or is it going to be, somebody else? And I think Army fans were spoiled because Bryson Daly was who he was. Guy was an incredible athlete, and I think that kind of tainted the perception. And it tainted the perception of Cale Helms, because it wasn't that he was a bad quarterback. He just wasn't Bryson Daly. And I think that's the difference for this year. Like, if he defines who he is as a player, early in the season, he'll get more than 8 games. If he doesn't, and then if he's trying to, win the Heisman Trophy on every pass, then there's probably going to be a problem, and so he may not make it to 8 games. But like truth in lending, I think coach is going to break on a starter. He's an experienced guy. And, what led Bryson Daly to have such a great season was we watched him develop over the course of years. Right. So we saw him a couple times as a plebe, saw him a couple times as a yuck. Then he started as a cow and a firstie. And like, if it makes sense logically to do that with Cale Helms, I think that's the way that they would like to go. So that's my thought on it.
Honestly, unless something wacky happens, I think he starts at least 10 games. The guy wasn't particularly injury prone last year. I definitely thought at times that they should have called the game a little differently to keep him healthier. We saw his passing down the stretch late in the season maybe suffer because he was, I can only guess, banged up in the lower half, if I had to guess. But he didn't look like a guy who had trouble staying healthy. And I don't believe that either of the current, the rising yearlings would push him off the field. So unless something really weird happens, I think Helms starts a bunch of games.
Yeah. I think that's fair. So moving on, and this might actually help. This other question may fill in some of the gaps, right? Predict a rush share split, quarterback, B back, and A backs for next year. Feel free to, feels to me like it'll be more skewed towards quarterback, fullback without short, predictions from the group. Man, I would say yes and no, and I'm gonna throw a quick shout out to Omar, because his favorite player, Lloyd Benson III, is still on the team. So I think I think he and Samari Howard both had some moments last season that made everybody go, why don't they use those guys more? Right. And I think we all asked that question at some point in the Navy game when Samari Howard had that decent run and then we didn't see him again, and it was like, well, why did that happen? And I think, diversifying your playbook is the way to win. Like we saw it with Navy, as much as we don't like to give those guys any props for anything, got to give them their flowers on the diversity of their offense, so by having multiple split backs / wide receivers / multi.
It really helps to have 4/5 firsties who've been playing together since they were at the prep school.
Yeah. Well, since they were in high school, because you got to think 2 of those running backs played together in high school. So like,
I mean, they were just on the same wavelength in a way that's very tough to get to in college football.
Yeah, there was a lot of chemistry there as well. So I think, and I think that's going to play into it as well, So like if there's good chemistry between the B back room and the split back room and the, starting quarterback, if you're trying to have a long run down the stretch, you've got to keep your quarterback healthy. So you've got to feed your running backs more, right? You've got to feed your running backs more. And whether that be the B back position, whether that be a split back position, like, look, I can tell you right now that their opposing teams looking at that film from the Fenway Bowl and going, okay, crap, how do we defend a quarterback that can run, a fullback that can run? And like, they may not have a guy that's as fast as Noah Short, but they got 2 dudes that are pretty damn good athletes in the backfield. So now the triple option truly becomes the triple option because you've got weapons in all 3 positions.
So they got the ball out to the slots much more than I expected in the spring game. In the spring game, and this shouldn't have surprised me, but it was just weird to watch. Cale Helms didn't carry the ball at all. He operated the offense like a point guard and looked very good doing it. So, and they ran a trap to Samari Howard, which they also did in the Navy game. They ran a stretch handoff to Lloyd Benson, which I can't remember the last time I saw that, but what a good idea that was. Yeah. I don't know how much I believe they're going to get the ball out to those slot backs, but it felt like, they never found a solution for the loss of Kanye Udo until the Air Force game when Bartosh came on strong. and then he got hurt, and they were left searching for the answer all over again. And God's power, they wanted him to get there, but he didn't get there. He didn't get all the way where he needed to get in his plebe year, which is not shocking.
Yeah.
Not
Surprise,
shocking,
surprise.
right?
Yeah.
So then we finally saw in the bowl game like what this kid can be and why they've been trying to make it happen. So now here we are a year later, and if they figure that out and God's power has a good year, then behind this experienced offensive line, one thinks that would be more balanced and not just the Kel Helms show.
Yeah. Well, I think, and I think there's something to be said about diversity. Like, rarely do I talk about offense, but if I'm talking about the Army offense, the one thing that I want to see is multiple players with 700 yards rushing. Right.
Yeah.
So if I have multiple players with 700 yards rushing, I have the three-headed monster and the triple option. And that's really what it boils down to. I have split back with 700 yards, a tailback, a fullback with 700 yards, and a quarterback with 700 yards. I think if we do that, then it's like, okay, well, how do I scheme against an offense that's that diverse? Because at some point,
you just got to throw it a couple of times, shake it up a little bit, show that you can throw it, so that they have to honor it, and that will changes everything.
Yeah, make 100%. A credible threat.
So
for
anyway,
all right. Last commercial. Hey, so there's a reason why you don't need another workout. You need a coach who's an expert in fitness and proven protocols, but more importantly, someone who has survived total and physical mental collapse of themselves, pulled themselves out of the fire, and rebuilt themselves even stronger. Greg Ganicelli, a West Point graduate of class of 97, is an Army veteran, a successful enterprise software sales executive, an IFBB pro bodybuilder, NCI certified fitness coach, and now is the founder of Warriors Physique Fitness. After losing everything, his marriage, his identity, his confidence, and his physical and mental health, Greg completely rebuilt himself from rock bottom through faith, discipline, and elite level training. At 50 years old, he became the overall classic physique bodybuilding champion of the NPC Masters in Las Vegas last year. He earned his IFBB pro card. And so it just goes to show you that it's never too late for you to become the warrior that you were meant to be. Today, Greg's mission is to coach men and women who are struggling to stop drifting and decline, resurrect themselves physically, mentally, and spiritually with his online coaching program. If you're ready to reclaim your strength, your confidence, and your warrior ethos, apply now at warriorsphysiquefitness.com and start writing your own comeback story. As a special note, Greg is offering active duty military, veterans, and first responders 15% off a 16-week transformation program fee. As for football, First Club members and West Point grads get a massive 30% discount on the same initial 16 weeks. Look for him on the website, just like all the rest of our sponsors. There'll be a button that you can click and find him, connect with Greg, get your screening done, and start your road to, a better you in 2026. Look great for when you take your shirt off during the bowl game and Army football next year.
Yeah. Go to your reunion looking like you're ready to be there.
Yeah, right.
Since tarps off is a thing now.
Yeah, for sure. Dano, you got a favorite thing?
Just that, it's the off season and it's been fun, but like as for football is gearing up behind the scenes. We just literally this week got invited to Army Navy again, which was very exciting. I did not think that was a given by any means, but they seem happy to have us, which is awesome. Omar had this outstanding interview with Lehman Hall, probably the best passing quarterback in Army history. Rob's working on an interview with Kelvin White. James is working on scheduling an interview with AD Tom Theodorakis. And today is our day. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. Personally trying to shift gears a little bit from writing my own stuff to writing as for football stuff, but stick with us. It's exciting time. Ray, I thought you had something.
Good time to, and I dropped it. Good time to be a Firsty Club member is what I'll say. I'll put that pitch out there. Okay. If you're listening, you're not a Firsty Club member, you're missing out. Jump on in there. It's a great group of folks.
We definitely are not in mid-season form just yet. Had a few stumbles today, but we're gonna get there. A couple of shows before we start things back for real in August.
Yeah. So, hey, like I said, this has been great. So as for football, Army football show, we talked about AI, which is kind of an odd topic for us, but hey, so what? We're a bunch of freaking old dudes with nerds, and we appreciate you guys. And sometimes you can't always talk about football. And guess what? Analytics. That's your AI in college football. So just so you know. and that was for Jordan. So I'm sure he's rolling over in his grave right now because he doesn't like the word analytics. But for the crew here at the Ask for Football Army Football Show, I'm Rob calling to you out of Fayetteville, North Carolina. We got Dano Ikebesa calling to you out of Coastal Connecticut, and Ray Kimball, longtime First Tee Club member from Phoenix, Arizona. And we appreciate you guys coming and checking us out today. And look for the next show. We've got some interviews coming up. And if you haven't listened to the Lehman Hall interview, go back and check that one out. It was a very good interview. Omar did a great job on that. And always nice to listen to the Bomb Squad. Maybe we can bring that back in the 2026 season. But as always, beat Navy.
Beat him.
Beat him.
That'll do it for this edition of the Ask for Football Army Football Show. Big thanks to everyone riding with us each week as we break down the Black Knights, the season, and everything that makes Army football special. Before we get out of here, a huge thank you to our sponsor, Jocelyn Bradley Real Estate. Whether you're buying, selling, relocating, or just trying to figure out your next move, Jocelyn Bradley is ready